We're enjoying the evening of the fourth victory Monday of the year. The 49ers just absolutely curb stomped the New England Patriots 33-6. It was a phenomenal performance from Robert Saleh's defense, despite missing 8 starters from week one. You look at this defense, they're missing Nick Bosa, D Ford, Solomon Thomas, Quan Alexander, K'Wan Williams, Richard Sherman, Jaquaski Tart, and Jimmy Ward. They are missing 8 starters who began the season, and they held the Patriots to only 6 points despite starting a bunch of guys who began the year as backups.
Absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. I give props to Robert Saleh, who I've questioned, but that defense stepped up. I mean, they're not getting the pressure that they should be generating because obviously they've lost D Ford, Nick Bosa, but that team is balling out, led by All Pro Fred. Whenever you mention Fred Warner, his name's All Pro Fred from now on. And nothing else. All Pro Fred.
All Pro Fred balled out yesterday. That interception he had on Cam Newton was one of the best interceptions I've seen in quite some time. He read Newton's eyes, plucked the ball off the floor. It was such a graceful catch. The ball was like an inch or two off the ground. Fred Warner's athleticism was on full display right there. And for sure, he is the heartbeat of the 49ers defense, and he's playing at that all-pro level.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at Fred Warner, I look at a defensive linebacker who not only is leading his team, rallying his troops, but he's bringing the wood. He's bringing the kitchen sink with them. He's bringing the energy. What else could you want from a linebacker right now? He's linebacker one, and honestly, right now, I'm gonna put him in that linebacker category with Patrick Willis. He's a better coverage linebacker than Patrick Willis was when he was playing. He's a phenomenal tackler, and he communicates more than Patrick Willis did. Patrick Willis, he got his guys in line, and he was the kind of guy who he trusts you to know what you're doing. Fred Warner is telling you, hey, this is what's going on. The play is going to the right. It's going to be a sweep. It's going to be a reverse. Let's get it going. So he tells everyone where the ball's going before it even goes there.
He is playing out of his mind, and when his contract is set to expire, he may just become receive the richest contract the linebackers ever received in NFL history. He's playing that good. He means that much to this 49ers defense where they may end up having to pay him $14-15 million, just record-shattering money at the linebacker position. The 49ers defense just completely took the will, took the life, took the soul out of the Patriots offense. It was a great performance, and it was the first time the Patriots lost 3 consecutive games, regular season games, since the year 2002. The Patriots have their first 2-4 start to a season, or they're experiencing their first 2-4 start to a season since the year 2000, since Coach Belichick's very first year as a head coach. And what a better way to have them get off to one of their poorest starts in the last 20 years than by Jimmy Garoppolo leading the way on offense. We'll get into the offense in a little bit. But defensively, let's spend some time talking about Tarvarius Moore. Tarvarius Moore is a player we have both been pounding the table to get on the field more. Tarvarius Moore, it's inexcusable that before this game against the Patriots, he played one snap the last 3 weeks. And then you see him play the safety position. He's not just lining up as the single high safety. He's playing in the box, and he's laying the wood. He's flying all over the field, making plays on third down, coming up and just flying and tackling Harris, the running back, Damian Harris, who is a big back, and just flying up to stop him on the second level of the defense. Tarvarius Moore, I was extremely impressed by.
Like you said, we've been preaching to get Tarvarius Moore on the field. I've had many people who have said, "Oh, he's only a free safety." No, man, he's a safety. He's a strong safety. He's a free safety. He is a playmaking safety. The play where Emmanuel Mosley got the interception, shout out to E-Man. That was a great pick. But when you look at it, He was there. He was in position to make a play, even if Emmanuel Mosley doesn't get the interception. So that's something you take away. You take away the deep pass. Now you're in the run game and you're coming up and you're stuffing the run. You're laying the wood. And that's what I like to see the 49ers defense. He brings another element to this defense that Jimmy Ward doesn't bring. Jimmy Ward doesn't have that blazing speed that he could come down and lay the wood on you, play man to man on you. And on the back end, he's got you. So that's one thing I like more about Tarvarius Moore than Jimmy Ward. He brings more to the table. And I think moving forward, there's no way that he's not on the field. There's just absolutely no way. You can't keep him off the field.
Trace Moore, his performance yesterday reminded me of Deshaun Golson. It really did. I was having flashbacks of watching the Hawk, watching Tarvarius Moore. If you were to compare Jimmy Ward and Tarvarius Moore, Jimmy Ward's 5'10, 5'11. He is not a big safety. Tarvarius Moore is 6'2. He has 4'3 speed. He can run sideline to sideline. He has that vertical speed. He is a special player, and it's very irritating to know the 49ers locked themselves in to a couple more years of Jimmy Ward and ultimately are holding Tarvarius Moore back from developing as a safety. I was so impressed by Tarvarius Moore's physicality. He's a long, lean guy. You wouldn't expect a guy with his stature who's not super bulky to play that physical. And that's what impressed me the most about his performance yesterday. He was just flying all over the field and making tackles no matter the circumstance. And like I touched on earlier, he was playing in the box. I thought he was limited to playing the free safety spot, being that single high safety in the Seattle scheme defense. No, he was lining up almost as a linebacker in the box, flying and making plays around the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Tarvarius Moore. I mean, everyone looks at him and they like to label players before they even play. I mean, everyone labeled Tarvarius Moore as a rangy guy or whatnot, but in reality, we never knew who Tarvarius Moore was because he's never really been on the field, and that's for me is mind-boggling because in the Super Bowl he made a big play. So you would think, okay, coming into the offseason, Robert Saleh is going to adjust some game plans and have a big nickel in there. Or he's going to throw in, hey, Tart, you're going to sit a few reps. Hey, Jimmy Ward, you're going to get some rest. But no, he's decided that I'm going to stick with Jimmy Ward and Tart the entire way. But they don't bring you the ability to make game-changing plays. Yes, they're very sound. They don't give up the big play. But when do you see Jimmy Ward or Jaquaski Tart make a game-changing play, forcing a fumble or interception? You hardly see it.
Very rarely. Jaquaski Tart, he has two of the more highlight caliber turnovers I've seen forced. The one-handed interception against the Panthers, 2017 week 1, Coach Shanahan's first game leading the 49ers. That was one of the most ridiculous interceptions I've ever seen with my own two eyes. I was there at Levi's for that game. And then you have him stripping DK Metcalf at the goal line last year. That was probably the most impressive forced fumble recovery I've ever seen with my 2-0 eyes. But outside of those highlight worthy plays, they don't generate a lot of turnovers, especially Jimmy Ward. He does not get a lot of interceptions. And more, he played 5 snaps in the Super Bowl, 5 snaps in the Super Bowl, picks off Patrick Mahomes, has another pass defensed. If the 49ers did not have the injury curse that they've been experiencing, I would be advocating to trade Jimmy Ward right now. Get out of his contract. Trade him to a team like the Cleveland Browns who are desperate for a safety. That's what I would do if the 49ers could stay healthy. But because they can't, it's almost like you need to hold on to everybody that you have because at any moment someone can go down. But if that wasn't the circumstance, I want to see Tarvarius Moore play more. We want more. That's what we want.
Absolutely. I also got to give props to Tarvarius Moore's running mate, Harris. He played a
Marcel
hell of a
Harris,
game as well. Yeah, Marcel
he
Harris played
did
a hell of a
too.
game as well. I mean, everyone came into the game worried about is he going to be missing tackles? Is he going to be flying around, not knowing what to do? But he played a really sound game, and there was a couple key plays where it was back to back. It was Tarvarius Moore who made a stop, and then Marcel Harris made a stop on Cam Newton to force a 3 and out. And those are two big plays where to start the game. and it was really nice to see. It was on the first drive of the game for the New England Patriots, and I was enjoying it because those are the two young guys that you wanted to get confidence early in the game. So I shout out to both of those safeties holding it down, and hopefully Tarvarius Moore is in there next week as well because we're going to need him with that speed that the Seattle offense provides.
Marcel Harris is definitely worthy of a shout out. Just the reason why we're going off on Tarvarius Moore, is because the lack of playing time he's been receiving. Like, how are you going to play a guy who looks like that over the course of a 60-minute football game on defense and only play him one time over the course of the last 3 weeks? It's mind-boggling to me. We have a comment here from ePrizzle14. Jaquiski Tartt is about to be a free agent. Yes, Tartt is about to be a free agent. And I really like Jaquiski Tartt. I feel like the 49ers should have re-signed him opposed to Jimmy Ward. Of course, Jimmy Ward got his contract extension this past offseason. I would have rather paid Tartt. But the reality is with Marcel Harris and Tarvarius Moore, yes, the sample size is small, but those are two safeties making nothing. And you can save a lot of money at the safety position if those two guys step up. And it's unfortunate that they might go right back to the sidelines when Tartt and Ward come back and they're healthy, because you really need to find out what you have in those two players. You really do.
Yeah, see, for me, I like Jaquiski Tartt, but there's nothing he really does that stands out for me to pay him the extra. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, when you're a safety, you need to be a ball hawk, you need to be making plays, or you need to provide something that I can't get from a guy who costs less. Marcel Harris, for example. He does everything that Jaquiski Tartt does, but at a cheaper cost. You mentioned one of the forced fumbles that Jaquiski Tartt had last year. Well, we could also talk about the forced fumble that Marcel Harris had on Lamar Jackson. It was an equivalent strip, really nice plays. So that's when I see them like, well, they don't provide any extra man to man or extra zone coverage where they take stuff away. They're not the phenomenal blitzers of the Jamal Adams. And so that for me, it's I can move on for them and I could be fine. Because like we've seen last week, we were definitely fine without those two guys.
It's almost like the coaches and the fan base are content with Jaquiski Tartt and Jimmy Ward because they don't give up the big plays like you touched on. They're very sound defensively. They don't really allow bad things to happen, glaring things to happen when the defense is on the field. And you start to almost overrate that ability when the reality is you want your safeties to generate and force turnovers. And Harris has a nose for the football. He's forced 5 fumbles over the course of the last 2 seasons. We've seen Moore in very small glimpses make plays on the football. They both have the nose for turning over the football. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But coming up this week against the Seahawks, and even for the rest of the season, I just don't see how you go back to what you were doing a couple weeks ago and allowing Tarvarius Moore only to play one defensive snap in 3 weeks. He needs to play at least 15, 20, 25 snaps per game, depending on who the opponent is.
Absolutely. It's you're absolutely right. I want to talk about that D line real quick. So
Let's do it.
that D line, so Armstead, I need to move more from him. I mean, we're paying him top dollar. I need to see a little bit more from him. But Javon Kinlaw made some flashes this week that I think he needs to get home on some of those sacks that he's there but doesn't finish. Kerry Hyder's balling out. We see Kevin Gibbons getting in some play action. Contavious Street. What do you see from this D line moving forward, Nick, that could make them be better and make us the playoff team that we could possibly be?
It's a problem. The defensive line's not necessarily a problem. It's not finishing plays with sacks. When you start to play quarterbacks like Russell Wilson coming up, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, you need to collapse that pocket and hit them. And the 49ers have not been doing a good job of that over the course of the last 2 weeks. They did not sack Jared Goff, I believe, on Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago against the Rams. And outside of the hits, the Dre Greenlaw blitz, and Kevin Givens had a sack to close out that game, other than that, Cam Newton was not really getting hit. When Jared Stidham came in, he was not really getting hit. So I like Robert Saleh's creativity to scheme up blitzes, blitzing Fred Warner, blitzing K'Wan Williams and Jamar Taylor out of the slot, blitzing Jimmy Ward from the safety position. It just hasn't been necessary. So I wonder if the game plan's been rather vanilla, where they haven't needed to blitz anybody, but the defensive line needs to start generating pressure, not just generating pressure, but hitting the quarterback and finishing plays with sacks more consistently.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people like to look at the defensive line and critique them. They like to say, "Oh, they're not getting the sacks. They're not doing it." But pressure is also a really important thing. Sometimes you don't get home on the quarterback, but when you provide pressure, what it does is it makes the quarterback speed up, makes him make the throw that he doesn't want to make.
It's a
So
mind
when I see
game.
the
It's in their head.
exactly a quarterback has a 3 second clock. 1, 2, 3, got to get the ball out. So when the D line is providing enough pressure, like there was a stat I seen that I really enjoyed. The 49ers defensive line average depth is from the quarterback, but when he throws is about, I want to say it was 3.75 when I had seen it. So
Yep,
that was
I
really
saw that.
interesting because we're closer to the quarterback than the average team when he releases the ball. So that puts a little bit more pressure on the quarterback because he can't step into his throw as much as he would like. He can't do what he normally would do. But now, like you said, when you play the Russell Wilsons and you play the Aaron Rodgers, that 3.75 yards or whatever it was is going to be much bigger because those guys don't care if you're in their face. They're going to make a perfect throw and look at you and say, "Hey, good job. Next time, sack me."
Exactly. And I'm pulling up the numbers right now that you're referring to, talking about the 49ers and their depth away from, you know what? I actually can't pull it up right now, but I saw what you were talking about. They were around that 3.8 yards away. The 49ers defenders on the defensive line were about 3.8 yards, 4 yards away from Cam Newton each time that he released the football. Whereas if you looked at the Patriots and how close they were to Jimmy Garoppolo, when he released the football, it was around 6 yards away. The average NFL defender is about 4.25 yards away from the quarterback when he releases the football. So those are the stats that Marco is referring to. I also want to talk about Jamar Taylor. Jamar Taylor stepping in for K'Wan Williams, covered Julian Edelman in the slot extremely well. Edelman didn't have a catch until garbage time. He was a non-factor, and he's the Patriots' best receiving threat. Taylor played extremely well. 2 interceptions. It's been a while since a 49er player had 2 interceptions in a game. So it was very nice to see Jamar Taylor step up in the absence of K'Wan Williams, who should be returning from injury this week. And in the case that he doesn't, I'm feeling good about where Taylor's leaving off because he had an extremely good game against Cam Newton and the Patriots. Let's jump to the offensive side of the football. We went defense first today because Robert Saleh and those damn 49er defenders deserve it. They played their asses off. We're playing sideline to sideline. Great things from the 49ers defense. Let's jump into the offense. They stuck to the game plan, the identity that they formed against the Rams. Whether you like it or not, the 49ers are a team that are going to run it down your throat and rely on the short area passing game. There's nothing wrong with that. Jimmy Garoppolo had a better day throwing the ball down the field. It wasn't always pretty. The ball was ugly coming out of his hands sometimes. I know you're ready for this, Marco. Let's get into some Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay. So when we talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, last week everyone put up his stat line and said Jimmy Garoppolo was phenomenal, 260 something yards, 3 touchdowns, had a great stat line. But then when we pull up his when they wanted to pull up his stats this week, you look up at the stat line, he had good numbers. He had 2 interceptions, and then the fan base wants to go, well, we need context. One of the interceptions was a punt. The other interception was okay because he over. But then last week when we wanted to go, let's look at the context of the game. There was a game plan, and they were running pretty much extra handoffs. Those throws to Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and those guys running those quick passes, those are extended handoffs. So when you look at that, those aren't touchdowns to me. Yes, they're going to go touchdowns on the stat line, but in the context of the game, Jimmy Garoppolo last week did not have the better game than this week. I personally think Jimmy Garoppolo had a better game this week than he had last week. But the fan base will look at it and say, no, last week he had a much better performance because his stat line said so. No, sometimes the stats lie. Sometimes the stats say, okay, this guy had a great game. But in reality, the team that he played against just wasn't that good.
Yep, I agree with your stance. Last week, his stat line was glorified. He was not asked to do much. And at the end of the day, when you look at the box score without the context behind it, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo, he had 3 touchdowns or whatever it was last week, threw for 268 yards, completed a high percentage of his passes. But when you look into it, just like you're talking about, he was throwing extended handoffs out in the flat to Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, the jet sweeps. This week, 100%, he played better. He had a couple of bad throws. Brandon Ayuk, that bomb that he threw, it should have been a touchdown. It was not a pretty ball coming out of his hands. Then you have the interception that he threw. That sailed when the 49ers were up 7-0. That ball sailed on him. It was a bad pass, probably a bad decision. Something clearly was wrong there. A pass that Garoppolo would tell you he wants to have back. The interception at the end of halftime, Kyle Shanahan came out and said that he was expecting Brandon Ayuk to make a better play on the ball so that Garoppolo doesn't, his stat line's not affected by an interception. So that's something Brandon Ayuk needs to learn to do, to come back and fight for those Hail Mary passes, those 50-50 balls, and make a play to at least break up the interception. Garoppolo's passes, if you were to really look at them to get nitpicky, the ball were not tight spirals coming out. The ball was fluttering out of his hands, and that's a reason to be concerned. But it didn't hurt the 49ers. But you would like to see tight spirals coming out of his hands, again, to be nitpicky. But that's what you want out of your quarterback. You're a professional NFL quarterback. You need to be throwing a tight spiral. The ball should not be fluttering out of your hands. And when you get into these games, as this gauntlet continues against the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers, the Saints, and Drew Brees, Garoppolo needs to be throwing darts, throwing dimes, not throwing ducks 30 yards downfield to Brandon Ayuk, where if the safety's in a better position, it should be an interception. But that's the one thing I'd say, that the ball was not leaving his hands pretty, but all things considered, a much better performance than what we saw last week.
Absolutely much better performance. And I want everyone to know I'm not jumping at Jimmy G, critiquing him. When I pay a guy $27 million, I hold him to a high standard. When Jimmy Garoppolo came over from New England Patriots, I was high on him. I thought he was capable of being a franchise quarterback. So I'm going to hold him to my standards. And my standards are that this franchise is known for having a great quarterback. And Jimmy Garoppolo is capable of being a really good quarterback. I'm not going to say great quarterback because that's not what he is. He is capable of being a really good quarterback. Now, the confidence needs to be instilled in him. I understand that. But at some point, you have to get that stuff out of your head and you have to just let the ball out. Like the ducks he was throwing. He was throwing some ducks on Sunday. The pass that he overthrew George Kittle. That's unexcusable. The pass to, like you said, the Brandon Ayuk pass. I had someone telling me right away, as soon as he threw that, I text my buddy and I said, "Hey, that should have been 6." He said, "Well, at least he completed it. Normally he doesn't complete that."
Baby steps, baby steps.
But I text him back. I said $27 million just to complete it. $27 million needs to be on the money, touchdown, and that's when his stat line, like, okay, his stat line really showed what it was. But done knocking on Jimmy. I mean, I want to talk about that O-line. How do you feel about the O-line moving forward, Nick?
I'm feeling better. I'm not so much feeling better about the offensive line. I'm feeling better about Kyle Shanahan understanding his offensive line and calling games to put them in a position to be successful. The last couple of games, again, this is the 49ers' identity. They're a team that's either running the ball or looking to get the ball out of their quarterback's hands as quickly as possible. This is not a sit in the pocket offense where Garoppolo has to go through his progressions and make the appropriate decision. That's not what this 49ers offense is about. This new style, this new identity they found caters to the offensive line, who is struggling to pass block early on in the season. You look at the last 2 weeks, they've kept Garoppolo fairly clean. The Patriots had 1 sack. They had 1 sack early on. I believe it was Lawrence Guy. That's one sack you've given up in 8 quarters, the last 8 quarters. And it's not because the offensive line is really stepping up. It's just as much because of Kyle Shanahan's play calling. So I like where the 49ers are at. I think this is a good way to get the offensive line some confidence so that when Garoppolo does need to drop back and has to go through his reads, he has the time to do so. So they're able to hold up their defenders, keep them away from Garoppolo for 3.5, 4, 5 seconds. So it's a step in the right direction. I'm not sold that the offensive line woes have completely gone away. I think there's a lot of factors contributing to their improvements.
I would agree. When you run the ball, you start to dominate teams and you oppose your will on them. So what it does is, as an offensive lineman, you enjoy doing that. You enjoy literally taking someone's body and literally doing what you want with it. So when I look at the offensive line, it's like, okay, they're enjoying running the ball down people's throat right now. And that puts confidence in your head that, hey, no one's going to stop what I could do. But I did look at PFF, and I'm not the type of guy to put PFF to the only thing that you could look at. But the first 5 weeks, the offensive tackles and offensive guards, I'm going to read off where they were ranked pass blocking efficiency. So we had Trent Williams, who was ranked 26 in pass blocking efficiency. Mike McGlinchey, number 45. Lincoln Tomlinson, 49. And Daniel Brunskill, 51. The last 2 weeks, we have Williams being the best pass blocking tackle in the NFL. We have Mike McGlinchey at number 11. We have Lincoln Tomlinson and Daniel Brunskill both ranked number 9 on their respective sides. So for me, that does show, okay, PFF might be saying that they're playing a lot better. But what it does now, when I start to look at it, okay, we're running the ball down teams' throats. So now D lines need to respect the run, and they can't get upfield as fast as they normally would, which provides the offensive line a little bit more time to pass block. So that's what I think is the reason, like you said, Kyle Shanahan's game plan is helping his offensive line out. And I do tip my hat off to Kyle Shanahan for understanding that his offensive line was struggling and he's figuring out how to help them out.
Jeff Wilson Jr., phenomenal day yesterday. 19 touches, 120 yards, career high, 3 touchdowns. I'm going to come out and say, I am sorry, Jeff Wilson Jr., that I doubted your ability to pick up yardage when the 49ers have the ball in their own territory. I was reluctant to see him get the start, to see him get the first couple of touches. I didn't know how to feel about it. He was not picking up chunk yardage on that first drive, and I tweeted about it, and I was concerned. And the reason for my concern is going into this game, I said JaMycal Hasty needs to be the featured back. Jeff Wilson Jr., your other viable option outside of Jerick McKinnon, only averages 2 yards per carry when the 49ers have the ball on their side of midfield, away from scoring a touchdown. So there was some context there that Jeff Wilson Jr. since 2019 is only picking up 2 yards per carry when the ball's in 49ers territory. Well, he shut me up real quick, was running so violently, so physically, picking up yards, bullying Patriots defenders, just truck sticking them. And when I talk about the 49ers finding their identity, it's unfortunate that Deebo Samuel got hurt because these guys, they're offensive players, but they initiate contact and look to hit you like they're linebackers. Like Deebo Samuel and Jeff Wilson Jr. have linebacker mentality instilled in their brains, even though they play the running back and wide receiver position. And the same goes for George Kittle. These guys run angry. It's scary. I was watching Deebo Samuel on that first drive, or maybe it was the second drive. I want to say it was the first one. He caught that check down pass from Garoppolo, is running down the sideline, and it's like he flicked the R stick, the right analog stick on your PlayStation controller forward, because he just lowers his shoulder and just tries to bully you over. And I love that mentality. It's who the 49ers are. They are not a team that's going to take shots down the field. They're going to move the ball by getting it to their playmakers and letting them bully you.
Absolutely. And the quote that comes to mind is George Kittle. So George Kittle went on record and he said, Jeff Wilson Jr. goes into a dark place before every single game. It's awesome. You can see it in his eyes. He's an absolute monster. And he went on to say, football is a violent sport. If you don't go into that dark place to be the violent and physical, you're not going to last very long. Like, it's fun to be part of a team with a bunch of psychopaths. He said he fits right in. He said, we're a bunch of dudes who just want to literally play as physical as we possibly can and impose our will. And that, I'm going to keep saying this. Imposing your will is the 49ers method of winning every week. They impose their will in the run game. Their defense is imposing their will, forcing teams out of their game plan into what Robert Saleh wants it to be. And that's what I enjoy, because Jeff Wilson Jr. literally was bringing the boom. He ran over a dude, and I was like, whoa, okay, I see what you're working with today, Jeff. And that's one of the things that I enjoy, because when you watch football, everyone likes to see the juke, the let me see the Barry Sanders type of move. Nah, I like to see dudes literally bully people. That's my style of football, and I enjoyed it this weekend.
So we'll talk next about the running back I thought should have been featured, JaMycal Hasty. He got his touches. He carried the ball 9 times for 57 yards. He looks so explosive. Granted, a lot of his touches came when the Patriots defense was already beaten down, but I am so excited to watch this season progress and Hasty's role progress as well, because he looks like a running back who can really step up in these critical times where Jeff Wilson Jr. is out now. As great as he was yesterday on his 3rd touchdown of the day, halfway through the 3rd quarter, high ankle sprain. It's like every week someone's specifically getting a high ankle sprain. Raheem Mostert, high ankle sprain, he's out. Tevin Coleman, I have mixed emotions about Tevin Coleman because we've seen him really carry the load before, get 20 carries and put up 100 yards. He just was not showing any of that ability early on in the year. So he might be coming back. Jerick McKinnon was non-existent almost on offense. So JaMycal Hasty, I am really excited to see him, and he looked really good yesterday.
Absolutely. So Jerick McKinnon, I knew he was gonna be really limited. I knew they wanted to keep his legs fresh for the remainder of the season. And Kyle Shanahan said that on KNBR that he doesn't plan on using Jerick McKinnon because he overused them the beginning of the season.
That's
So
hard to argue.
so that's one of those things where Jerick McKinnon's needs are no longer the young needs he once was. But
Yep.
JaMycal Hasty, the first time he touched that ball, he looks electric. And he
I
brings
wanted
go ahead.
I was gonna say I wanted to post this highlight earlier. I want to say his first touch of the game was a reception. It wasn't a carry, it was a reception. Does that sound right to you?
I believe so.
So yes, it was, because it was the 16-yard reception that he had. It was the 1st or 2nd quarter. It looks like he's going to go out of bounds. He doesn't go out of bounds. He keeps running up the sideline and obliterates Brandon Ayuk. Friendly fire, runs into the back of Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk goes flying onto the Patriots sidelines, just laying there. And I'm like, here we are again, another running back, another ball carrier that just sees red when the ball's in their hands. And I freaking love it. I love it. I can't wait to see more JaMycal Hasty.
Yeah, his first was a 16-yard pass out of the backfield, a swing pass, and then the next play he shows the explosiveness and he lowers his shoulder again. I was like, okay, my guy, I like it. But what I like about JaMycal Hasty is he's not just getting these open lanes and picking up the yards. He's lowering his shoulders and getting yards after the catch. He's doing it all, and I think JaMycal Hasty could be featured against the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks have a decent run game, so going with the depleted running back, and we might see Tevin Coleman. I'm not a fan of him, but at this point, you need a running back on the roster. So I mean, if they put him up, they pull him up. But I do think JaMycal Hasty needs to be featured in this offense a lot more. Moving forward, my thing would be, if I was Kyle Shanahan, I'd have a 3-headed monster in the backfield. Jerick McKinnon, I'm sorry, you're out of there. And I would have Raheem Mostert once he's healthy, Jeff Wilson once he's healthy, and JaMycal Hasty. All 3 of those guys could catch the ball out of the backfield, and they could turn a 5-yard gain into a 25-yard gain, a 90-yard gain.
That's tough to argue because, like you're talking about, I don't think Jerick McKinnon does anything in particular that those other 3 guys cannot do. So once everybody's healthy, I'm right there with you. The ideal running back stable, your 3-headed monster of Mostert, Hasty, and Jeff Wilson Jr. It was tough to see Jeff Wilson Jr. go down yesterday after he just had a career day. And there's another 49er who had a career day yesterday. His name, Brandon Ayuk. 6 passes, around 120 receiving yards, looked real good, led the team in receptions and targets. His development is going to be extremely important for this team's success. He needs to come on the same way that Deebo Samuel came on this time of year last year. So Ayuk, moving forward, he needs to be targeted 7 times per game. I think what we saw target-wise and reception-wise for him, his involvement overall is exactly what the game plan needs to be for him moving forward.
I would say it needs to be increased with Deebo being out.
Oh yeah, of course.
So he had 7 targets. He had, like you said, his stat line was beautiful. I think Brandon Ayuk is the best receiver the 49ers have had in a very, very long time. He is the best receiver on the roster right now in terms of route running and ability to create separation. That is what when I watch him, like, he does it at ease. And everyone wanted the 49ers to trade for Odell Beckham. I think they have a better version of Odell Beckham in Brandon Ayuk. As long as the 49ers can get someone to air the ball out to him, they have a version of Odell Beckham in their hands.
I'm going to hold off on him being better on Odell Beckham, a better version. The potential's there. I like what I've seen from Brandon Ayuk, but we've also seen what OBJ can actually do. It's not a matter of potential. It's a matter of what he is and what he's done. But I like the comparison. And Brandon Ayuk being compared to OBJ is something that we heard immediately after the draft. And it's going to be a comparison to follow along to for quite some time. Let's talk about Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne only had 1 target. I'm a huge Kendrick Bourne fan. His attitude, his energy for a guy that just received 1 target, didn't have a catch, is what the 49ers are all about. He's on Instagram this morning posting pictures, Victory Monday. He doesn't care that the 49ers aren't targeting him or throwing him the ball. He cares that the 49ers are winning. And if you go back and watch the game, watch the tape, he is blocking his ass off. I love Kendrick Bourne. He's just a well-rounded wide receiver who enjoys blocking, enjoys team success, and does not care whether or not he's getting his targets. And if he does, at least he doesn't show it. He does a tremendous job of having that team mentality. And he's a guy I'm going to continue to pound the table for to re-sign. And then let's take a look at the wide receiver room because it's getting interesting. Richie James Jr. is starting to play more snaps than Trent Taylor. I would like to see James get an increased role and at least take over for Taylor's snaps. Taylor does nothing. I'm sorry. He had a great closeout to his 2017 season, his rookie year. Richie James Jr. has much more upside than Taylor. And I feel like he can do the same exact things out of the slot. So if Richie James can go this week against the Patriots, he's day-to-day with an ankle, or this week against the Seahawks, I would like to see him take over that Deebo Samuel role and be featured on those swing passes, on those screens, because we've seen Richie James get screen passes before and take them 50 yards. So that's something to keep an eye on. How are you feeling about the wide receiver room?
Wide receiver room, it's nuts. So the 49ers went from having Dante Pettis on the trade market to going, hey, Dante, we kind of need you to stay around on the football team because we no longer have receivers. So it's like, whoa. Richie James, if he's healthy, he should be getting some reps. He should be getting those end arounds that Deebo normally gets. He's fast enough to do it. He should be getting those swing passes that Deebo gets. I mean, not as much as Deebo does, but a few of those reps just to keep the defense honest and keep that same type of game plan. I think Trent Taylor, man, I feel bad for him. Hell of a player coming into the league, his first year, and then that back injury and that foot injury. It just, man, there's those are when he got that back injury, I said it right away. He's no longer going to be the same. Once you have a back injury, you don't really come back from those. They linger. Dante Pettis. So I had someone text me and say, how many lives does he get? Does he really get 9 lives like his cats? No offense to him. That's not a knock to him. But what do you see Dante Pettis going forward? Like, do you see him actually getting reps? He has more potential than than Trent Taylor. He could potentially provide a spark. I mean, he was a good punt returner in college, so he get some of those swing passes and make a move? What do you think?
I don't think Dante Pettis' skill set, even as a punt returner, has translated to the NFL level. That's why we haven't seen the same punt return success that he exhibited at Washington. So I don't like his elusiveness. We haven't seen him make a lot of defenders miss when the ball is in his hands. When he's running routes, he has DBs on skates fairly frequently. I just went back and looked at the notes from yesterday, and someone asked Kyle Shanahan if the 49ers would still look to shop Dante Pettis despite the injuries. And Shanahan said he feels like nothing's going to change. He's still looking to move Pettis. So we'll see what happens. The 49ers are getting extremely thin at wide receiver. You have Kevin White, Juwan Jennings, who's now on practice squad IR. So we'll see what happens if Dante Pettis has a role moving forward, but it looks like the team's going to try to move him. And I just don't like that Shanahan went public with the trade in the first place. Like, why are you going even further to diminish Dante Pettis' trade value by letting the entire world know that you're looking to trade him, that you're actively shopping him? It's a bad look. And if you do have to go back on it and keep him on the team because of injuries, if I'm Dante Pettis, screw you, Kyle Shanahan. I don't want to play for you anymore. So I don't like that Shanahan put Pettis on blast like that, more so than he's already had over the course of the last year and a half, by going public, by announcing you're trying to trade him.
Yeah, I agree. But at some point, he doesn't really have trade value, anyways. So even with Kyle going public, I mean, what's he gonna get? Even if he didn't go public, a sixth or seventh round pick for him, if that, a swap of picks. So I kind of see what Kyle Shanahan's coming from. I mean, the dude doesn't want to be there. You could tell in the way he carries himself. The guy I'm really looking forward to watching and seeing how the 49ers handle is River Craycraft. So it's interesting name, but I'm gonna go and watch some film on him tonight, and I'm gonna get back to you, Nick, on Thursday, and I'm gonna tell you if he could be potentially a guy they use. I mean,
No, there ain't
you don't
nothing
think
there,
so?
bro. There ain't nothing there with River, with my guy River. Washington State Cougar. Nothing's happening with him. I'd rather see Juwan Jennings, even though he's hurt right now.
On
I'd
the
like to
IR,
see him later on in the year. I know, but I'd like to see him later on in the year. Please do not put River Crockcraft, or however you pronounce his last name, on the field. If he could get on the field, I'm sure he would have replaced Trent Taylor by now. You're not going to see him. You'll probably see a increased Trent Taylor role, which is already discouraging enough, but it is what it is.
when do you ever see Kyle Shanahan go away from his guys, Nick? He's not gonna go away from Trent Taylor.
He already has.
But
Trent Taylor
he
has seen a huge cut in the percentage of his snaps. Huge. And Richie James is playing more than Trent Taylor right now.
Okay, I understand that he's getting more playing time, but he should have cut Trent Taylor from camp. He really should have. He didn't
Well,
do it.
why? Because he was doing good. Everybody, year after year, this is a point that I was trying to drive home all offseason, year after year during training camp. What does everybody say? They said it in 2019. They said it this year. Trent Taylor's the star of the show. He's going to lead this team in receptions. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. People were saying, people in the 49ers locker room were going to say he's going to be a Pro Bowler. And what I said all offseason long is, it does not matter what you do during training camp if your game does not translate to Sundays. And that's exactly what Trent Taylor is. He is a player that does good in practice and does not translate to games. And there's always that one player on every team who does things in practice. I played high school basketball. You know, there's practice players and there's game players, and the practice players only are good in practice. And then when it comes down to it, they aren't that same player. You can blame it on a lack of opportunities. Trent Taylor's had his opportunities and has not been producing. So I'm not a Trent Taylor fan the same way many other 49er fans are. I have nothing against Trent Taylor personally. He's had great moments for this franchise. I just think he is so overhyped. And I was right about him. I'm right about him. He's not wide receiver that's ever going to be Julian Edelman. He's never going to be Wes Welker. He's never going to be Danny Amendola. And these are the comparisons that were being thrown out all offseason long. He's never going to be any of those things. The idea of Trent Taylor is what Kendrick Bourne is. Kendrick Bourne is what everybody wants Trent Taylor to be. He's a bigger version of Trent Taylor, but he makes tough catches. He moves the chains on third downs. He is a security blanket for Jimmy Garoppolo. He showed that last season, 75, 80% of his catches turning into first downs or touchdowns. Trent Taylor, this is his last year with the 49ers. Book it. Book it.
I agree. I had him in my 53-man prediction. I had him cut from the roster, keeping Richie James. I do not see what everyone sees. Okay, I understand, like, they hear the camp hype, but even when I watch the training camp videos, there's nothing there on Trent Taylor. Like, when I watch them, I'm like, dude, this dude, bro, you're gonna run a slant, you're gonna run your little whirl route, and you're gonna get smacked. And in one hit, bro, he's done. His body is not like it used to be. And that's what I see from him. He looks really slow. He looks really timid to get hit. Every time he used to try to fight for yards, now he just goes down. So I want to see more Richie James because I do like Richie James. He brings a little bit more explosiveness. Moving forward, this receiver room, I think it's in better hands than it was last year because of Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel won't be out too long. I mean, 2 weeks. And like you said, Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne is going to be the key to this 49ers offense moving forward. He's going to be used in a sense of Brandon Ayuk was used this past weekend. Brandon Ayuk will move into that Deebo Samuel role and getting a lot of more run plays and swing passes, as well as they're going to run that leak route and they're going to hit him on a deep touchdown pass this week. Watch.
So I almost don't like that. And here's why. Kendrick Bourne is perfect for what he's asked to do. He's a tremendous fourth option. That's when he's at his best. He doesn't have the same stat line as he does as a number one or number two receiver. He put up better numbers when he was asked to do more. But the 49ers' success was not where it is now when Kendrick Bourne's asked to do more. I like Brandon Ayuk playing the role that he is. I'm sure you can design a few plays for him to imitate Deebo Samuel. But the best person I think the 49ers should turn to for the sake of picking up yards after the catch, for the sake of getting the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands quickly and letting a playmaker do something with the ball, is Richie James Jr. Have Richie James Jr. and Brandon Ayuk split the plays that would normally be designed for Deebo Samuel. You're throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Let Richie James get 4 of them. Let him go to work. He's your punt returner for a reason because you like his playmaking ability. You like his ability to make defenders miss, and we've seen it from him before. Let Kendrick Bourne be Kendrick Bourne. Be that possession receiver. So we have a comment here. Is Richie James hurt? He is hurt. He's day-to-day with an ankle sprain. But if he's able to go this week, I would really like to see him get those touches that Deebo Samuel would get behind the line of scrimmage. Get Richie James Jr. out in space and let him be a playmaker.
Yeah, I agree with you in the terms of Kendrick Bourne not being suited for a number one receiver role or number two receiver role. But the way the 49ers used Brandon Ayuk last week was a way that suits Kendrick Bourne. Over the middle, some slants. Kyle Shanahan schemed him open for that wheel route. But you're not going to have him doing that every play. So what they're going to do is you're going to see a little bit more Kendrick Bourne. You're going to see Brandon Ayuk in that Deebo Samuel role, only to be a disguise. And then you're going to have Kendrick Bourne over the middle. But the main part to this offense is going to be Kyle Juszczyk, Ross Dwelley, and George Kittle. You're going to see a lot more of those 3 guys to help out in the pass game.
I'm not doubting Kendrick Bourne's ability to step up and be productive in the absence of Deebo Samuel. I'm more so talking about the 49ers sticking to their identity with Deebo Samuel out. Again, this is a team that relies heavily on short area passes, the short area passing game, getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Kendrick Bourne has been much better this year after the catch, but he's catching the ball 10, 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. You need that second threat that Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk partnership where they're two guys that are interchangeable. And I don't see Kendrick Bourne that way. I see Richie James that way, which is why I'm very intrigued by the possibility of having James step into that role. No, he's not going to be Debo Samuel. He's built completely differently. But the point is he's a playmaker. He averages 20 yards per catch, very small sample size, but you can't sneeze at the fact that he averages 20 yards per catch throughout his career. He's a very explosive player when the ball's in his hands. When the ball's in his hands, big plays happen. You got to be able to do that. Are you fact checking me right now? Are you
No,
looking
no,
at
I'm
Richie
not.
James Jr.?
I'm not
Because
fact checking you.
I'm
I'm not
telling you
fact
right
checking you.
now. I'm
No, no,
telling you
you're
right
right.
now.
You're
I
right.
know.
But the funny
Yep.
part is that I'm not fact checking you, but we're gonna. I've had this conversation with multiple fans before, man, and they're gonna come at us like Richie James is not that great, and that's the funny part because it's like when you look at his stats show when he gets the ball in his hands, he produces. And like, what do you?
Yeah.
I'm showing you his stats, and then they're like, they'll show me Trent Taylor's stats. Look at Trent Taylor. Look, Trent Taylor, little guy, does really good. I'm like, bro, his stats are good, but now look at a guy who gets the ball less and he's more efficient. So I agree what you're saying. That's why I started laughing because I've had those
Yep.
conversations
No,
with
I
those
know.
fans, and
And don't get me wrong, I'm not a guy that's like Richie James needs more reps because he is completely being underutilized. I'm saying his skill set and what he can do when the football is in his hands is way more similar to what Debo Samuel can do outside of Brandon Ayuk than anybody else on the roster. So that's where I'm at with that. And I don't want to see the 49ers deviate at all from this identity that they found. Yes, Jeff Wilson Jr. is out. Yes, Raheem Mostert is out. Yes, Debo Samuel is out. But don't change your identity because of it. Keep trying to build off the momentum that you have built from running the football. Believe in JaMychal Hasty. Continue to believe in Tevin Coleman. As hard as that may be to swallow, he has shown glimpses of being a good running back. Against the Seahawks, run the ball. Run the ball. Just because they have a bad secondary does not mean you need to exploit it. This is not the Seahawks preview show. That'll be Thursday, but we're touching on it a little bit. I want the 49ers to continue to do what they've been doing over the course of the last 2 weeks and find players that can do their best to imitate the players that have been making this work. So having Richie James Jr. imitate Debo Samuel to an extent. Obviously, he's not Debo Samuel. And believing in JaMychal Hasty and Tevin Coleman to pick up the same kind of yardage that we've seen from Jeff Wilson Jr. this past Sunday and Raheem Mostert 2 weeks ago. That's all.
I absolutely agree, Nick. Absolutely agree. I mean,
And
go ahead.
go ahead. I'm excited for what the 49ers have built. You look at this team and what they have coming up. They are now 4-3. They were just 2-3. It felt like the world was ending. The season's over. They have bounced back in such a magnificent way, and they have a huge opportunity here to get healthy. If you can just win one of the next two against the Seahawks or the Packers, you almost have back-to-back bye weeks. You have the Thursday night game against the Packers, have a full 9 days between the Packers and Saints game. Then you have an actual bye week where you have 13 days between the Saints and the Rams game. So if the 49ers can walk away winning two of their next three games, I absolutely love the position that this team is in, which is mind-boggling because they're missing like 65, 70% of their starters. You got to tip your hat off to John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh for what they're doing because no one in the NFL can string together the success that the 49ers are stringing together right now when taking into consideration all of the injuries.
I agree. Someone asked, how will 49ers secondary match up against Seattle? Oh my Lloyd. Hey, we're going to be doing that show on Thursday. I don't know how to say your name, but we're going to be doing that show on Thursday. Check us out on Thursday because today was a recap of Sunday's game. Thursday, we're going to do a breakdown of how we think the 49ers will do on offense and defense against the Seattle Seahawks. So check us out on Thursday.
And I'll give a quick spoiler onto how I feel about that before Thursday, before we wrap things up tonight. I want to see the 49ers implement a 6 defensive back look at almost all times. I want to see 2 high safeties with Jimmy Ward and Tarvarius Moore. I want Jaquaski Tart to line up next to Fred Warner. And then you have your 3 cornerbacks, K'Wan Williams in the slot, if he's healthy, if not, Jamar Taylor, Emmanuel Mosley, and Jason Verrett on the outsides, guarding the boundaries. I want to see a 6 defensive back look against this high octane Seattle offense. But again, I'll get into that more on Thursday. It's Victory Monday night. We're celebrating. The 49ers are on a roll. They're on a 2-game win streak. They have a crazy point differential. They're beating teams up. They're undefeated on the West Coast. We still got to get a home win, but they're undefeated on the road. Undefeated on the road, 4-0 on the road, heading into Seattle. We'll get into that game on Thursday. This concludes the 14th episode. We're 14 episodes deep already of the Faithful Fanatic podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in.